Welcome to Sahara TV, and with us in the studio today to have a chat is an activist, a rebel, so to speak, is an artist and a reformer, so a Pan-Africanist. And it's good to have you on Sahara TV, Isha Shabaka.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So we're looking at cannabis cultivation revolution and the role of cannabis in economic and social transformation in Africa. But I believe a lot of Africans would like to seek clarifications with regards to certain issues. So let me first of all start and looking at you personally. Could you share a bit about yourself, your journey as an activist, and why you're passionate about cannabis revolution in Africa?
Okay. So I'll start with my kind of personal story about how I first related to cannabis. As a kid, I did see it growing in my grandfather's farm. And my friends were, I saw the plant, my friends were telling me, hey, we want to let your grandma on the front and we want to smoke some of that. They were smoking, I wasn't. So I was a good boy. So I went to my grandfather. He said, son, you have to go talk to your mom about that. Which is my grandmother. So I went to my grandmother and I said, yo, I kind of want this. I was about 15, 16. I said, I want to smoke that thing. She said, me no know. They were calling me Teddy. Me no know Teddy. They say we'll make you mad. No, I was kind of a good boy at the time. So I said, okay, all right. I don't want to get mad on my grandmother's clock. So I'm going to wait until I'm 18.
Right.
So on my 18th birthday, we got together with my friends, and that was my first experience. Didn't make me feel any way. And I didn't kind of get into it at that time. I was still studying. I focused more on my studies. But then I got to America. I was in college. I had my first child. I was about 24. And one of my cousins, the only other Rastafarian in the family, invited me out to have some smoke with some of his friends. It was like Christmas. And, wow. We had young wives. We left the wives at home. We went out. And I had my first, I would say, out-of-body experience. First truly religious experience. And since that day, I haven't stopped smoking. But, as I was coming up and doing the smoking, I had to buy ganja, literally. I literally developed a habit where I was smoking about a half an ounce every week. And that was kind of a large chunk of my income. But anyway, I decided that, okay, this is worth it. When I questioned myself, I said, okay, this is for your mental health. Because I was also I kind of was angry because when I left Jamaica, I felt like a human being. I felt like I was a human being. When I got to America, I literally felt like I was a suspect pretty much all the time as a young black man. Everywhere I go, I felt like I had to justify myself. I had to...
It's all about racial profiling.
Yes, there was so much things that I was not used to in Jamaica. And it made me angry. So that anger, I kind of sedated myself and justified my habit that, I don't want to do anything stupid. So let me just relax, take my ganja, relax, and continue with my life. And that's how I kind of proceeded. Now, another thing happened during that time. I was going back and forth in Jamaica, and every time I came through the police, came through the airport, I was stopped and searched. It was another part of this is like my first experience in Jamaica being profiled too, at the airport. And so every time I passed through, they would call me, single me out, call me, search me. And I hated that. So I said, I look at myself and I said, you know what, these motherfuckers, I'm gonna show them. So after like the second time, I decided I'm gonna beat these motherfuckers every time. And I did. I know that they were trained, I knew how they were trained, and I decided that I'm gonna beat them. And literally, to put it simple, as soon as whatever I was carrying, I don't want to give her too much secrets, but as soon as I was at the airport and they called me in, whatever I had the cannabis in, that's the first thing I'd give to them. And they would just put it aside. And it happened literally every time. I because they were looking for what I was hiding.
See, thanks a lot for giving us some context about your journey. Let's just get some contextual clarity. Why, in your opinion, is cannabis a significant topic of discussion in Africa today, especially given its potential economic and social impact?
Okay, I think that there's two things happening. There's popular culture, music influenced culture. A lot of it is influenced by the Jamaicans of the past, people like Fela, African in the past. So they kind of opened the door in terms of people's thinking, the thinking of young people, where young people wanted to try it. And it became a popular recreational, I don't even want to use substance. And so I think that's how it has evolved over the past, where it came to the popular culture. But since living in Africa, I understand that whereas it might be popularized by musicians, it was in existence in the culture long time. In fact, in Africa, a Babalao, a Yoruba priest in New York, I did a consultation with him, and he told me that the old priests used to use it in their medicine. When I got to Ghana later on, I was also told the same thing, that certain people look down on the ganja because it was associated with ancient practices. Practices that we now want to condemn and say it's like devil or anti-Christian, because the modern African society now refer to them as Christians. So anything in that traditional sense that they don't understand, they want to demonize it. So it was always there within our culture. It became popular with music, but it was always there. Now, the thing that inspired me, and I think that is also inspiring a lot of people, is the economics of it.
Okay.
If you were to look at it, it has now become a multi-billion-dollar industry. But it was always in the multi-millions. It is, in fact, I read someplace that the first war between Russia and the West was over cannabis. The use of the ropes that sailing ships, during the period when ships were using sails, okay, those ropes using to hoist sails were made from hemp, which is one of the types of cannabis, okay. And in the in the late 18th century, with the Industrial Revolution, the Americans started to synthesize things, and the steam engine came in. So the use of those ropes declined. Okay, so it was always a part of the older economy. But since the steam engine came in and less use for sail, it declined, at least the industrial use. It is also said that in the early 19th century, because DuPont, which is an American industrial giant, began to synthesize things, making synthetic ropes, synthetic everything.
Yeah.
Then the Americans wanted to discourage the use of other competing materials, and is one of the reasons why they instigated like a worldwide ban on cannabis. Okay, because cannabis was legal in the United States right up till I think the 1930s, when it became illegal.
Now, let's look at the global comparison. Many countries today are decriminalizing or legalizing cannabis. Why do you think African countries, including Nigeria, has been hesitant to follow this trend?
Okay, so there are a couple of things here. After the United States made it illegal in their country, and after the advent of the founding of the United Nations, the United States, as part of the requirement to join the United Nations for newly independent countries, they had to accept certain laws proscribed by the United Nations in their constitution. So whatever was illegal in the United States and the United States did not want to come into their country, all the other nations had to acquiesce. And so we literally were encouraged to accept these laws that made cannabis. There are many laws, but the particular one that made cannabis illegal into our constitution and our legal system. Now, that fact is still so.
Sadly.
Okay? Now, the fact is now, though, that the United States, or at least 30 states within the United States of America, have legalized cannabis or decriminalized it. Germany has, Mexico, there are a number of countries, Canada, that have made cannabis legal within their jurisdiction. Africa has not, by and large. There may be a few countries who have a legal regime, but they have not. I believe that is caused mostly because of Christianity. Christians have taken a stance against cannabis for various reasons, which is to me hypocritical, because they are not taking stance against cigarette and liquor, which are man-made substances, but they have taken issue with the work of God himself, which that's something for Christians to understand.
All right. Now, let's look at the economic opportunities available. How can cannabis contribute to Nigeria's economic growth, especially African countries' economic growth, especially given the history of the continent's leaders' resource mismanagement?
Okay. First of all, if we look at what the cannabis market is.
Yeah.
The cannabis market basically, let's say within Nigeria, it's a multi-billion-dollar market.
Yeah.
According to the United Nations figures, 60% of the men in Nigeria are I think they were talking about the cities, smoke. 60% of the men. I think it's a conservative figure. No, let us just look at those numbers, for instance. If you look at those numbers, Nigeria's population is 230 million. Half of those are kids. So let's say it's 125. Half of those are women. Let's say it's 60. Half of them don't smoke. So 30 million smokers. Now, if they're anything like me, which I believe that they are, they're smoking about a half a kilo to 3/4 kilo of ganja every year. Now, if you crunch those numbers and you arbitrarily pick a figure of, say, 500 United States dollars per kilo by 30 million, the figure is staggering.
Days.
No. Why is the government, to me, keeping that kind of money in the underground economy when it is claiming to be cash-strapped? I think it would make sense for them to legalize. But there is, again, it goes back to certain moratoriums signed up to by these countries. Even Jamaica, for instance, a country like Jamaica that has legalized weed, it can't just export its weed anywhere. There has to be bilateral negotiation with the country who wants to import. It's not free like that because those UN statutes are still in place. So part of, I think, Nigeria's government and the other government reluctance is that they're also unwilling to challenge the world power structure on that level, because it would require, if for us to really take advantage, it would require an open market.
Shabaka, give us a little orientation on the science of cannabis.
Okay, so as it relates to the plant itself, there are three species of cannabis. There is cannabis indica, cannabis sativa, cannabis ruderalis. Now, what's the difference between the three? Okay, so the cannabis ruderalis, largely known as Indian hemp, does not contain the active ingredient THC, the compound THC. It doesn't have that compound in any high quantity.
Okay.
So it doesn't really make you high. But there are medicinal values to it.
Okay.
It is also mostly used in industrial applications, because that plant grows really tall, and it is very well suited for making cloth or rope or spinning into yarn. Okay, it is, and it's very strong, so it is generally used for that purpose.
Okay.
Now, the cannabis sativa is, you would say, kind of in between the two. It has all the compounds of ruderalis, but it also has a pretty decent amount of THC.
Okay.
If you smoke it, you will get high. It does. It is actually the strain most widely naturally found in Africa.
Okay.
Cannabis sativa. It has a longer period of growth and flowering than the third group, which is indica. Indica and sativa, they both get you high. But the indica, it grows shorter and it has a higher THC value. So it is also the most widely, how would you call it? So there's this process in cannabis where they make new strains.
Okay.
Okay. If you were to Google certain names, you'll see all these
Different kinds of strains.
Of strains. Mostly they are from indica, but they are also mixed, because scientists and growers have been tinkering with the plant for generations. So everyone wants to develop, making a strain is like a brand. Okay. So because, and this is where also the the folly of our government is reflected. The Americans, even while they have banned cannabis, they have never banned the research.
Wow.
So the American farmer has over the last 50 years been developing new strains, okay, to contain high levels of THC and other compounds. Some they've developed to create a higher level of CDB for medicine. So they've been experimenting with the plant for the last 50 years. Okay. So much so, not only have they experimented, they've been promoting through magazines and competitions. They've been promoting their American strains. Meanwhile, we've been sleeping on the matter. We have not allowed any kind of experimentation. We would lock up the farmers. It's like, I like to use the football analogy in cannabis. Imagine while some people are practicing World Cup football, we are locking up the players. No, the game is going to go on. But since all the African players have been placed in jail, when the World Cup come on, America will be the place who have all the players. We would not have any competition. Not only have they developed various strains to produce choices in the market, they have devalued what we are doing and labeled it bushweed. Meanwhile, if they want to develop a new strain, they will come to Africa secretly. They call them strain hunters. Find a strain with properties that they want, because we have the most diverse.
Oh, exactly. That's where I wanted to ask her.
The most number of species, the most diverse quality of genetics in ganja.
In terms of comparison, quality, you know, I'm talking about the genetic compensation.
Yes.
Comparing African weed to other countries like America, China. We also have Thailand is also producing for both medicinal use as well. Where does African weed stand?
Listen, I believe, and okay, so let's go to American weed. American weed they've been experimenting.
Yeah.
So for certain qualities, if we were to go in the market seeking the high, for instance, or fine quality CDB, you're going to find it in American weed.
Wow.
But all the genetics come from Africa and India.
Ooh.
Okay, so we still have that genetic garden, that we're still the Garden of Eden. You're still gonna find the highest qualities in the African weed, and you're gonna find from the highest to the lowest. So when they look at all that in between, they just lump it all together. We are not this because we have not allowed experimentation
and research.
Right, and research. We cannot identify different strains or qualities in our ganja.
All right.
But they will come, take it, go identify it, and reproduce it over there.
Oh. All right. Let's look at the global hypocrisy. I mean, we have earlier on, you spoke about some countries that have pushed for restrictive marijuana laws. They are now benefiting from its legalization.
Yes.
How do we address this double standard in international relations and policy making?
Well, you know, I don't want to be disparaging to our leadership, but I think it really comes down to the stupidity of the leadership that we have. Because they can see, they know that the United States of America, 30 countries, cannabis is legal. They know that Germany has legalized ganja. They know all these things. Their figures are there. Are they actually buried their head in the sand? Is that what they're doing? I think so. I think that our leadership on so many issues, and I actually blame Christianity for that. Why? When you worship a God who doesn't look like you, and some people who look like your God has given you some laws, and they're also bribing you to enforce their laws, that's a very difficult situation. It's called cognitive dissonance or something like that. You cannot accept challenging that man over his authority because he is like your God. And I think that's the biggest problem. We don't want to challenge or go against the authority of our former colonizers who have rebranded themselves as development partners. We don't want to challenge them because it is obvious if our people were to look in their economies, see what they're doing, it's obvious that we would have changed some of our laws by this time.
Let me ask you, in terms of building awareness, what message or what is your message to Nigerians who might still see marijuana through a criminal lens rather than as a resource?
Okay, I would say, look, we all know, we all have some God concept. It is God who gave this thing to us. He gave it to us to use it. Now, my question would be, why are you against the work of God? Or maybe they don't think of it like that. To ask the question, are you against the work of God? Most of the people who are against marijuana, they actually drink liquor. No, how can you prioritize a product of man over a product of God?
That's a good one. What are your immediate recommendations for the government, especially Nigerian government, to begin viewing marijuana as a development resource?
I would say that the government should, first of all, take the humanitarian step of freeing all ganja prisoners. Then secondly, give part of the development is to, okay, since we now have a situation where states have no way of generating their own revenue, states should be given the authority to grant license as a revenue income stream to use at their disposal for development projects. Okay, or for schools. School is a development project.
Yeah.
But it is we should I would recommend to the government to not have the federal government. This should not be a national institutionalized legal situation. Okay, it should be a vehicle to give power to states government to raise revenue, because we all know that if the state government is waiting on the federal government, nothing really happens.
Finally, Shabaka, you mentioned Africa's lag in economic progress. How does the cannabis revolution fit into a broader strategy for Nigerian and Africa economic empowerment?
Well, if you want to empower a nation, you empower its people. If Africa wants to be powerful, if Nigeria wants to be powerful, it needs rich citizens.
True.
It's simple. The government to find ways to enrich the ordinary Nigerian. And I'm saying that cannabis is a vehicle.
Isha Shabaka, Thank you so much for your insightful perspective.
Thank you.